and said that people are going to utilize those early in-stake functions to like their benefit, and people are going to push buttons and do those things. And it isn't always going to be like to the detriment of somebody getting hacked or somebody making a mistake because they didn't understand what they were doing. Like this is going to be people knowing exactly what they're doing and doing these things to their advantage. And that's why you kept them. That's why they're there, to be able to have people utilize that in their plan at the beginning.
It kind of like the question or the point that I was making, whatever, like, how could you make a floor? The Watsas may have a pretty good floor. Like, nobody's going to sell those for less than they're worth. Nobody's going to panic sell one of those.
It's true. That is true.
I'm waiting for my pictures. I don't care about the pictures, but other people care about the pictures, which thus in turn pumps my bags. I want pictures. People like pretty pictures.
Too bad there wasn't some sort of feature on that where you could like pay to input your own pictures choice, right? Like,
I think that it falls into like you don't want to have somebody putting nudity, profane things. Like there has to be a limit. So unfortunately there has to be some sort of developed control to not allow for you to have OpenSea strike against you and not allow for you to be able to do market stuff on their front end because of that, violating their whatever it is, right?
But yeah, somebody is developing an NFT airdrop, I think, of all the Watsas to Watsa holders, if I'm not mistaken.
You're saying that I should separate all my Watsas into different wallets right now, potentially?
No, I think I've seen some guy talking about how he's making art for Watsas. I'm assuming you get a different NFT for each Watsa, not for each address.
That sounds good to me. I don't have to make 100 addresses. Thank you.
That's cool. I'd like to see what happens there, I suppose. God,
like who wants to do that, man? Like, because you know people are gonna put their Watsas in cold storage and shit. Like, don't make us make 100 cold storage wallets.
There's so many. I've never have I ever seen so many random ideas about building stuff on top of something else like I have with the Watsas. Like the potential here is like all sorts of shit gets made. Like how crazy would that be that the people who are holding Watsas end up like just having people throw in all sorts of shit at them for some crazy reason? That would be
I think it's good. I think Watsas are the greatest Trojan horse that's ever existed for Hex because people love stupid pictures that are JPEGs. Now imagine stupid pictures that are JPEGs that actually earn you yield and earn you money. Like now they were going to have to find out about us, and now they're going to have to find out about Hex.
Right.
What a good name, by the way. Like Watsa. Like it's such a good name once you get into it. Oh yeah, Kevin, you were saying it. You're like you think like people are Watsa.
It's catchy.
Do you guys realize we could see like to like 800 times what we're making daily come these on the high end this auction? It's gonna be nuts, guys.
Especially for the people that are like staked in the Icosa staking pool, the Hedron staking pool, and have Watsas. They're gonna just get onslaughted. They're gonna be DDoSed in their yield. They're not gonna know what to do. None of you guys are gonna know what to do.
Onslaught me harder.
I'm buying a lot of shares, dude. Once all you dumb schmucks go and dump all your Hedron, I'm going to go and steal all of these fucking HSIs for pennies on the dollar. That's why it's going to happen.
Well, and then the cool thing is when people take yield and they're not participating because they're like, I've got the advantage and here I go. I'm gonna take profit. Like everyone else's yield's gonna go up as soon as those people do that. It's gonna give you more of an incentive to stay put.
And we also have Watsas on the other chains, right?
Yep, everything is getting copied. As long as it's the same contract address, which it should be, which it will, then it'll all be copied over.
Yeah, it's already copied, right?
Maybe some people are playing that game like where they're trying to get as many HSIs just for the fucking snapshot too. Like I'll be real, I would rather have like if I could afford 1,000 T shares through this HSI because I have a lot of Hedron or something, like I'm a whale, I would want to have it on both chains. I don't want to just have it on Pulse. You know what I'm saying? So like these auctions like happening, they should even go for a higher price because like you want them for both snapshots.
Well, I mean, even the pool of all the HSIs that are coming up for liquidations on the liquidations auctions, whenever Pulsechain decides to actually go active, all of those get copied over too and have two separate liquidation auctions going at the exact same time with all of your copied tokens for you to still participate in both of them on both networks. It'd be tough.
Yeah, that's awesome.
You better get yourself a second computer at that point if you want to actually participate, because that would be annoying as heck. So you have to, swap back through it on your one single computer. But yeah, a lot of things to think about. I just can't wait till November, 15th? That's the first 000 UTC timeline after everyone's already done all their bids, that the final countdowns will hit. Well, no, maybe not. Maybe it'll be the 16th. I think it all depends on when people actually initialize the default bid and the 24 hours starts. So there might be a couple that come out by then where you see yield and people might be like, imagine that. Like everyone thinks that because it's already started that next 00 UTC is when all the yield will start hitting, and then it doesn't because there's still like thousands of them for people to go through and default and bid on and go through the 24-hour period and finalize the actual auction in the first place. And then it'll happen the next 00 UTC as far as what was actually burned in the finality of those auctions. So all that stuff has to happen first, and then yield can happen on the next 000 UTC, and then just start whopping people upside the fucking head with all the yield after that. Like that's going to be fun to watch. What I think it'll be fun to watch. And then what's even going to be more fun to watch is like maybe even some of the YouTube personalities. They're like, we're gonna like live stream this and like see how it's all going, and then they realize that this process just keeps going and going and going and going and going and going and going, and it just doesn't stop. It's going to be for days and days and days and days, 24-hour periods with this availability for you to go in and bid on thousands of these things and have the opportunity to win them. And it just doesn't stop because every day there's more of them getting tossed into the pile for you to go back through and default and start another 24-hour period on them again. And as far as what I'm seeing, that they're still coming in every day. So let's say we get to November 13th, November 14th, and they're still coming in every day. That means that it technically won't stop. At least for the next 90 days, it's going to continue to keep happening with the yield.
That's what I've seen. There might have been a couple days like where there wasn't anything sent, but I saw one wallet that almost sent an HSI every day for the last 30 days. So it seems like they're pretty much going to come out every single day. There might be a dry spell at some point, but it'll flood back in at another point.
Okay, so we've got the whole what happens in the front end of it, right? The liquidations happen, everyone starts getting increased yield, everyone's all excited about that, right? Do the HSIs that get won for whatever price that they were, do they get used again in the buyback function? If yes, the amount of yield that people saw on day one that they thought was astronomical and crazy on the amount of Icosa yield that they got and the Hedron yield that they got because it was borrowing from those at the time, and then the bonuses that were attached to those for being 5555s or having a 10x on it could have been a 20% bonus that was going directly to the Watsa pool. So those who hold Watsas have an even further incentive to make sure that they're holding on to those things as these processes occur. And those are the ones that are going to be crossing their fingers going, God, I fucking hope that people turn these back into the buyback function and we get those bonuses hitting us again, right? Never mind the fact that people can end their stakes when they're done and, just toss their copied bonus into the Watsa pool, which is always, that's cool too. But in just the regular process of how the mechanics work, like when people do use that buyback function and it has any availability of a bonus on that particular HSI, like those who are holding Watsas are going to be very happy.
And not to mention, if we can see Hex turn itself around a bit, right? Let's say it starts heading towards 10 cents, the whole time making it more desirable to get part with this system, and everybody's loving it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And having, like, when you go look at the pair inverted with Hex and Icosa, you can see that you're not losing the value when you're holding your Icosa to being able to trade back into Hex, because the value of Icosa goes up as the share rate moves forward. So you'll be able to get that T-share a hell of a lot easier by using that pair as it moves forward.
Sorry, did you say Icosa's its price will go up with the T-shares as that goes up?
Yes. Yeah, I already sent this picture out earlier, but I think it's scrolled.
Apparently I missed that fact.
But that is the direct visual understanding of Icosa smacking the ceiling over and 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 over again.
Wow.
Right. So every time that share rate jumps up, which we just had a couple days ago, it jumped up like 700 or more. And then in 10 days, it's going to do it again. So you're not being diluted. You're not losing value through inflation. You're keeping right on par. So the share rate at that point, who cares if it moves forward? As long as you're holding on to Icosa, you'll be able to buy just as much Hex as you need to be able to capture those T-shares, because it's gaining that value in the T-share rate versus Hex, which Hex loses its own value against the T-share rate. Icosa does not. It allows for you to buy more Hex.
Icosa is like a Hex stablecoin.
For now, while supply is low. But I mean, it makes sense for liquidity providers to know. This is the thing. As a liquidity provider, you don't have a fucking crystal ball that tells you where price is going to go. But as you can look at that chart that I just posted right there, you kind of do. Only with this one pair out of all the cryptocurrencies that exist. I've never seen seen anything like this ever. So if you know where the price is going to be because it follows the share rate, then you as a liquidity provider, why the f would you provide liquidity in any other range other than right directly on top of where you know it's going to be? And there's a lot of people with a lot of HEX, and there's going to be a lot of people with a lot of Icosa. And where are they going to put their liquidity? Right there on that price to allow for arbitrage opportunity to happen for everybody. So somebody comes around and they just buy a bunch of it, cause a green candle, then you're going to be available to be able to use the HSI buyback function to get your hands to some Icosa and sell the price right back down to where the ceiling price is. You're directly taking profit and extracting value right into your own pockets, and it's built for that, just for you, those who understand it. And if anyone sells the price down, it is technically at a discount, and it'll be bought right back up, right to that price.
Or if not, if it takes a little bit, like, that's your like point of entry. Like, if you know how the system works, like there's things that are really good for point of entry at different points.
Well, the thing that makes it so easy to be able to do that and hold that ceiling price is the lack of supply. So as inflation happens, which we're about to have mechanisms to increase inflation quite a bit, then you're going to have more volatility. You generally would have more volatility with people selling, right? People selling and people providing liquidity across all sorts of ranges of price, right? Which, having it compared to USDC, that's totally different. Having it paired to HEX specifically is a whole different thing also. So people aren't going to be providing liquidity for HEX Icosa pairs in all different ranges. They're going to be slamming it right on top of where the price is currently. And when they know that the share rate is going to jump, which Crispy has hexfire.io, which does a really good job of being able to implement, like, if the OA does into stake, or if other big players do in their stake, that this is where the share rate will go. That means as a liquidity provider, you have a direct crystal ball that tells you where to move your liquidity before it happens, so you don't have an impermanent loss. So the whole entire time you're collecting fees. Everybody's collecting fees by providing liquidity right directly on top of the ceiling price and allowing for people to do arbitrage, which actually brings more volume through their pairs in a 24-hour period. And it's safe. Like, you don't have to worry about impermanent loss to a certain respect, because as soon as somebody does come sell Icosa, like a big giant amount of it, it goes right out of the available thickness of the liquidity that's stacked right on the price and goes down below that liquidity. And now those people are buying thin air, nothing. They're buying nothing after they've done that to themselves. So yeah, you'll be able to extract little bit of amounts into HEX, and the more liquidity, like if there's $10 million worth of HEX Icosa slapped right onto the price, and you go sell $500,000 worth of Icosa into HEX at that time, it'll be such a tiny little red candle that you were absolutely insignificant as whatever you were doing didn't matter, right? Because it's all stacked right on the price, and the price isn't going to move. Right now, we don't even have that amount of liquidity, so there's going to be high volatility on the price movement going up and down, causing for you to be able to have a higher availability of arbitrage when you do see those things that happen. And it's going to smack it right back to that ceiling again. And we're just going to have those types of things happening because liquidity, the thickness of the liquidity, is all provided right in that range, right on those ranges. So it gets very volatile if you go too high, and very volatile if you go too low. Like, there is no availability for the price to go lower than where the assets are being sold at, right? Eventually, you're just buying thin air. Like, you're losing a lot of value because you done sold too much. As a matter of fact, there's Uniswap that tells you, this is a bad deal, bro. You should not do this. There's not liquidity far enough for you to be able to sell price into that. We'll let you do it if you hit confirm, but it's not going to be good. You're going to lose 15, 20% of value if you do that. Nobody's that dumb. Nobody's going to just do that anyway, unless they're on testnet and they don't care, right? But this isn't testnet. This is your real money. This is your real money, your hard work. So yeah, it's fun
not to mention the fact that Hedron was born in a bear market. Look at how well it's done in this bear market, guys. Like, it's going to go insane in the bull, right? So we're so early still too. So
I'm excited. Shit, I'm all in, dude. I'm like actually like so far in. I'm almost like uncomfortable talking about it.
Don't put your Wattses up for less than $3. Otherwise, he's gonna buy that shit from you, and you're gonna be making.
If you did put up one for $3, like, and you got a bid for less, that was probably me. No, I think it's like one of those plays, like, where it's just so it's so silly when, like, my one buddy's in HEX and he loves shares. He did 15-year stakes. He loves interest. He loves everything HEX. He has Hedron, and then I try to get him into Wattses, and he's like, nah, man. He's like, nah. And I'm just like, but the yield. And he's just like, but it's an NFT. It's not a token. God, people don't see the value yet. As soon as these things start being worth, as Hex Icosa goes up, and then these things start just appreciating in price, because if somebody lists one for less dollars than what the Icosa value is, someone could just go in, buy it, sell all that Icosa on the market, and then burn another token.
Do you think anybody's going to care about like what day it was like created, like minted on?
Yeah.
Do you think that?
Because that just affects like how much Icosa is in that NFT, right? Because that one day, like where all the Hedron was burnt, those got like an insane payout, but not all of them did. So you kind of have to check the blockchain, I think, to see what it's redeemable for. So what do I do here? I got like last couple dollars that I shouldn't be putting in, but I am. Do I buy a Watsa, or do I put into the Icosa pool, or buy more Hedron? It's like, the choices. My Icosa pool is probably my smallest, though. I have a lot more Watsas than I do in the Icosa pool.
I mean, you would have to think of it in the point of view of the share rate moving. Do you take advantage of it today, knowing what the share rate is today through the Icosa pool? Or do you speculate on the availability of you getting a massive amount of Icosa yield through your Watsa that you know that you'll end up burning to take the Icosa to add to your pool later, which will be, kind of hinged on the share rate that already moved out from underneath you? And I'm not talking about the Hex share rate necessarily. I'm talking about the Icosa staking pool share rate that is the Hex share rate, that it utilizes that function, right? So, I mean, like I was saying before about Icosa holding its value, even though the Hex share rate moves forward, for you to be able to go get Hex and not worry about, losing out on being able to get the T-share, as long as the price is what it is and we're at the ceiling price at that time, for you to be able to use the value of what the Icosa is to get the Hex. But that is not stringent on the share rate on the Icosa pool. That doesn't allow you for the extra added value because you're already holding the Icosa. So that's up to you, bro, in that respect. Like, how much Hedron do you have? Are you satisfied with the yield that you get from that Hedron staking that you get for your APY? If not, then obviously make your choices accordingly. As you said that your Icosa was the lowest one, you may be able to put yourself into a position where it outshines the other ones right now as well. So that's really a loaded question.
It is, because I have, I think, 3 times the amount of money in Watsas, and I have like 20 times the money in Hedron compared to the Icosa pool. And like, I just like Watsas over the Icosa staking pool, even though it's awesome. But like, that's just me. But I'm like starting to think now, like, oh, dude, did I not put enough in there? If this becomes mainstream, even amongst just the Hex community, like where people start like, they just want to play the share game. Boy, having a nice position in Icosa, the amount of Icosa and Hedron that you're going to yield over time through all the auctions, people are going to want. I think more people are going to send HSIs to the contract, and all of that Hedron goes to the Icosa stakers. It's like, having a position in there for like a year or two compared to just buying the Hedron and then just leaving in the stake. It's hard. It's really hard.
So if I, being that I'm, staked in the Hedron pool, I'm also staked in the Icosa pool, and I also have Watsas. I have to consider to myself, at least, if I was to have a short-term, mid-term, long-term, like objective, like thought process on it, on how I would be with my own. Obviously, every single one of us objectively are going to be thinking psychologically different as far as like how we're set. I would have to say that the Watsas. God, now I'm going against I should just, however, it's so tough because because it's so damn good because of these bonuses, right? As people see that their minimum stake length is done and they start seeing all this yield, it's going to be so hard for them
not to emerge at the end.
Not that, but just to end stake after their term is done. Right? Like when it comes to the end, that is the decision. Like, how much has the share rate moved in the term that you had to have as your minimum? Now, do you even end it? Right? Or do you just add to it? Do you make all of them long-term plays and you didn't think about it enough because you did have one of them as your short term? And that comes to the point of why people would consider this waterfall strategy, to have other wallets that have smaller amounts with shorter terms to give you more options. So when you come to that point in time with your big wallet, when your term is now you can end it and take your yield and get 100% of your principal back and all of your yield, your interest that you got in doing the whole process. Do you make that decision and actually do it and take the yield and go put it into the other staking pool to try to gain that percentage? I think that's going to be really tough for people not to, and to just hold onto it and just know that the share rate that they had is going to mean that they're actually jumping up the ladder further than everybody else that's adding to their stakes too, right? Or not adding, but actually ending and restarting their stake to add to another one of their staking pools. They have to restart it again at a different share rate, meaning that those who didn't stop them and just added to them at whatever average it would have been to the addition, right? Because it also uses the share rate as it moves forward too, right? You don't just keep your original share rate through the whole entire every time you add, which I think some people are confused about that. Like on day one, if you went and made a stake and it was that share rate, and then you rode that share rate for 90 days, and then you went and added to it, but the share rate is now different. It's going to use the new share rate with the amount that you added, not the amount that you had. I mean, the amount that you originally had will still continue to earn yield off of the original share rate, but whatever you add,
those stake points are set.
Yeah, it's almost like a different set of stake points that you have that gets added to that yield that you added to, which, I mean, that's the thing. Do I take all of my yield and put it at this new share rate, or do I just continue to just build onto it with this new share rate that I have on it, giving me this advantage against the people who did actually end the stakes and add to another one and then restart again with all of their yield at a new share rate? It means that those who didn't just keep marching up the stairs getting more yield, right? So how many people that are going to come to this conclusion, and actually have this talk with themselves, like I just kind of did right now, right? In the reality of how everything works, like, where am I losing an advantage that I could have kept? Was I even in an advantage in the first place? I guess you'd have to understand that too. And where was it? You need to recognize these things before you can actually react or act to them, right? Some people are just going to be like, oh, well, I don't have to worry about an EES fee that came to the end of the term. I'm going to take my yield just like hexagons do, because they have a 14-day thing where they're forced to make that decision. There's no options after that other than good accounting. But generally, there's like other reasons why you'd use that good accounting. For tax reasons, maybe potentially the beginning or the end of the year for one, right? Or gas costs, I guess, as another, right? But now we don't have any of those worries about S-load function shenanigans with Icosa and Hedron staking. There will never be a problem with gas issues with this staking protocol that's added on to Hex. So that's another big giant bonus that's added into the Hex ecosystem of things that are built with it, in my opinion. Yeah. Everyone's making these decisions.
Maybe not. Maybe I'm dumb, but Pulsechain's obviously going to help. Lower end stake fees sound awesome. Because if not, you're going to have a lot of money, and that makes a lot of those little shitter 15-year stakes with less than 1,000 hex, less than certain amounts, just not really be able to they just kind of get burnt because they're not worth the gas.
I think that Vitalik and his team have 12 more years to figure out sharding before it actually becomes like a thing that people need to actually be like, oh, it's all over for Hex. And that's just my opinion. I mean, there are maybe some good points with the thought process of what the whole system state just said. And there are some genuine concerns for those types of things as well. But I mean,
if Pulsechain doesn't come out, Hex is going with it, period.
See, Hex was doing things that were far surpassing people's thought processes on were possible before Pulsechain was even a thought in the first place. So it's hard.
No one's going to put a dime in if Pulsechain doesn't come out. It would be done. It would be destroyed.
Oh.
Richard Hart would be on the run, right? And yeah.
I mean, launching a new network isn't that insane. So many people have done it, so I think it's going to happen. No matter what. You know what I'm saying? Especially now because we're just forking over the current stuff. I saw a meme the other day. I know coding's much harder than this, but to be nice, to joke about it, it's he said dev a Pulsechain dev keyboard, and it literally had Control C and V, copy paste. It's going to happen.
Another counterpoint to that is that every day that Pulsechain doesn't launch us, we weed out more hexagons that don't actually believe in the project, which might actually be good for the project because you have more less selling pressure later on. It's kind of game over with Hex already. We have 20 to 100,000 people who have 50 to 200 to 1,000 X, and they're all married to it for 15 years. There's really, like, short of like nuclear fallout, nobody's gonna let this Hex die. Like,